Hello, I'm Olivia Mattis, and I'm delighted to welcome you today on Super Bowl Sunday to a discussion of a really breathtaking, beautiful, profound film, The Girl Who Wore Freedom, about the historical relationship between France and the United States, one aspect of it. And we're privileged today to have the speaker, or to have the filmmaker. Her name is Christian Taylor. She's an award-winning filmmaker. This film in particular has been shown all over the world and has won numerous awards. I first saw it when I took a flight on Delta Airlines. That's how I discovered the film. It's like, oh my goodness, we have to show this film. So I tracked down Christian, and I was delighted that she allowed me to show it to you. With us also today, joining us from France, is Mr. Thomas Voisin, who is from Normandy, and he runs tours in Normandy. So if you want to go to France, he's your man. And we'll put all kinds of information in the chat box, and you'll see information in his presentation on how to get in contact with him if you want to learn more about this history. Our third speaker is Mr. David Chapman, who has a long and distinguished career in the U.S. military and has been involved in several of the commemoration events in Normandy. He was a very important partner to Christian in the making of this film, and today he's one of the vice presidents at the Michelin Corporation. So he wears many hats. You're in for a treat today. So Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And thank you for this wonderful opportunity and for everything that the Susan Mendez Foundation is doing to share these stories of rescue, resistance, and hope with the world. It's really incredible. I'm very delighted to learn about what you have been doing. It's important. And I want to thank Matthew and Emil and the rest of the team for pulling this event together. But really, I want to thank all of you who have joined us today. You've taken time out of your Sunday to be here, and it really blesses me. The most important part of making a film for a director is the audience, because if there is no one to see the film, what good is there in making it? So I really appreciate that you've taken time to see the film and that you've come here today to listen to us. So unbeknownst to me, my filmmaking journey began almost 10 years ago now. I can't believe it's been that long. When I learned that my son was going to Normandy to represent the 101st Airborne Division in the 71st D-Day commemorations. Now, what started as an adventure with my second son, Jacob, led to something amazing. We went to find his older brother in Normandy and watch him do some cool things in a historic place in a foreign country. That has evolved into something that was just life-changing, not only for me and my family, but for people around the world. It was just something that I never imagined in a million years. But not long after we connected with Hunter, really just maybe 10 minutes, this beautiful French woman came up and said to my son, "Excuse me, may I take a picture?" And I said, "Well, of course you can. I'll take the picture." And so I took the picture of her, and this led to several more pictures and meeting this amazing family, beginning with Danny, who ended up being the girl who wore freedom, as well as her daughter, Flo, and her husband, Jean-Marie. This moment was so surreal for me and overwhelming. I felt like I had just walked into 1944, and I had never known anything like this was happening. I didn't know where I was. I thought my son would be reenacting D-Day, not just, being there as a honor guard. But I was so happy to tell you that I was actually filming what was happening, because it was just mesmerizing to me. And I was filming at the very moment that I met them. And so I want to share that moment with you, because I want you to be able to step into what happened to me at that time. Now, this video is going to be a little bit hard for you to comprehend, because as it was very hard for me. So I want to explain it a little bit before you see it, so you can really enjoy the experience. So this clip begins with Jean-Marie Boucherie speaking. Now, he is Danny's husband, and she was 5 on D-Day. So on this day, when you see her speaking, she's 77. Her husband, Jean-Marie, was 7 on D-Day. So on this day, he is 79. And I had asked them both if they were alive on D-Day because I didn't know at this point. And Danny didn't really speak much English, so Jean-Marie took over. Now, he didn't speak much English either, as you'll be able to tell, but he spoke enough, and he told me that he started telling me all about his wife. Now, I asked him right away how he learned how to speak English, and he told me that he had worked in the oil industry, and he had been in Biloxi, Mississippi, which stunned me because I happened to be born in Biloxi, Mississippi. So for me, I just felt like this was a divine appointment. And I truly had felt like God had called me to make this film years down the road. And so I look back and feel like that was just something that was really special. It was a touchstone for me that we had that in common. And so at that moment, he begins to tell me about Danny and that she was born on Utah Beach, right off of the beach, about a mile. And that after the war was over, that time was so monumentous that her parents opened a bar across the street where she was born. Now, in this video, mind you, I knew nothing about what he was saying. I didn't really understand his English. I didn't understand all what he was telling me, even though it seems like I might. I was just, listening. It took me a long time to put it all together. But he was telling me that a year after the war ended, they built this bar and they dedicated it to honoring the men and women that liberated the town and spreading the news about the liberation. And they named it the Bar of June 6th. It still exists, by the way. If you go to Normandy, you have to visit. And he tells me that inside the bar, Danny's uncle, in this video, he refers to him, the good guy of the family, painted a fresco of the beach landings and the airborne landings and several other paintings to mark the life-saving moment in their lives. Those paintings are still there today. And he says that if you go inside, the paintings are always on the wall since 1945. So Danny then interrupts him. She begins to tell me about this famous book, and he turns around and tells her, "Stop interrupting me. Let me finish my story." And so Jean-Marie then says, "Let me continue with the life of my wife." And then he begins to tell me about this famous book that's filled with signatures and photos of famous generals and colonels and notables. And she carries it around with her, even to this day, with signatures and photos. And she shows it to everyone. She still gets signatures and photos of famous people that participated in D-Day or that are there on D-Days today. And so then she tells us about this picture of Danny sitting with Omar Bradley, who you may know is one of the famous generals of that time. And he asked my son, "Do you remember Omar Bradley?" And then I asked a question that was the first question that sent me on my eventual journey. But I'm going to let you listen to it and see for yourselves.
Danny, she's born in the Utah Beach, Sainte-Marie-du-Mont. And parents has a small bar at the visit side, painting during the landing with, yes, believe me, and the good guy for the family draws his paratrooper on the wall of this bar. Yes, when you cross Sainte-Marie-du-Mont, you can do that, the center on the right, and you have the bar du 6 juin. Bar of the 6th June.
Okay.
Is right, always writing. If you enter inside, and you'll see the painting. It's always on the wall.
Since 71.
Since 70 years.
Yes. On my book, I have.
Attends, le cœur de conversation. Please. Alors, I continue for the life of my wife.
Yes, go.
She has the golden book with a sign from Omar Bradley. Right somewhere.
Oh.
No, believe me.
She has a book with
Yes.
Dwight Eisenhower's signature?
Yes.
No, Eisenhower, Bradley,
Bradley.
Collins.
Omar Bradley.
Omar Bradley.
Bradley.
Collins. General de Gaulle.
I have between Bradley.
Yes.
I need to come to your house.
She sits just beside Omar Bradley.
Because
You
Trey
remember
Peak,
Omar
you
Bradley?
you're beautiful.
Sir, you remember Omar Bradley?
Omar Bradley.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
she sits
I
just
have
beside
a
on the
sign.
picture.
She's
Yeah.
And
on
Omar Bradley
my,
like that.
On
Wow.
my book.
Yes.
I'd love to know what you guys remember. Do you remember June 6th?
Yeah.
What do you-
I was 7 years during the
You
landing.
were only 7.
Yeah, 7. I remember.
Really?
The first paratrooper.
That was June 5th, 2015. And it's hard to believe, but just 4 years later, on May 28th, 2019, on the 75th anniversary of D-Day, we screened the first version of the film at the Utah Beach Museum. That was a miracle of God. It was 2 hours long at the time, as David and Thomas will tell you. It was very, very emotional. People were very proud of it. And this accomplishment was a result of many people, many other divine appointments with incredible people who believed in the vision of our mission. 2 of those are here today, as you've heard, Thomas and David, who are my dear, dear friends. And they have been with me from the beginning, and I'm eternally grateful to them and all of the others who have helped spread this message of the film. Since 2019, like Olivia said, we've won 26 awards. We've received distribution on Apple TV, Amazon, Vudu, YouTube, Canal Plus in France, and every French-speaking country in the world. We've flown on Delta and United Airlines, and I've traveled with the film to 36 states and to 10 countries and shown it to thousands of people. Our message of sacrifice, of rescue, forgiveness, gratitude, and love has resonated and touched people's lives in ways that I never could have imagined. Because of this film, people have met and married. Meet Julie, Jen, and Charlie. They met on the day that we were filming on D-Day. Charlie saw Jen in a restaurant and told her that she was the most beautiful girl in the world and could he have her number. She was my wardrobe mistress, and he was in the 101st Airborne Division, part of the honor guard on D-Day. They've met, now they have 3 children. Veterans have been able to return to Normandy to visit places they landed and liberated. Meet C.O. Bauer. He's 101. Last year, our team took him back to the D-Day, first time he's ever been there, to meet the French and receive their gratitude. When he got back, he said to the local newspaper, it was the best week of his life, and he only had to wait 101 years to experience it. I will go to my grave thinking that was one of the greatest accomplishments that I ever had. And veterans have found healing and peace before they passed, thanks to many French people who I've been able to connect with American veterans before they passed. And also this Czech young man who I was able to bring to the United States to meet this man. His name is Tony, and he is the last surviving Czech American fighter pilot. Jiri just brought over 1,000 birthday cards to Tony, who turned 101, and was able to bless him about 2 weeks before he passed away. He just passed away 3 days ago. And we were able to share all of that with his family, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. It was just a remarkable, remarkable thing to be a part of. So this beautiful butterfly effect has been incredible. It all came from because we stopped when one person asked for a photo, and getting to know them a bit, has touched and changed the lives of so many people. So if there is one thing that I want you to take away from this film, and is this, I really want you to understand that people feel the most loved, I believed, and appreciated when we stop and we take time for them, when we ask them thoughtful questions, and when we listen and we genuinely care to understand. This applies to veterans and Holocaust survivors 100%. But I've thought more that it also applies to people in our families and even random strangers that we may meet on the street. So thank you very much for your time today and for caring about these stories. I know if you're here, you care as much as we do. So hopefully you will share these stories with other people in your life.
Thank you very much, Christian. I'm always I like to hear that story, even if it's I hear that story 100 times because I live it actually with you since 2016. But yeah, I love talking about that. So thank you very much to let me talk about my experience of the Gold War Freedom here. So everything started for me here in Normandy when I was pretty young. As you can see, so it's a question of picture all the time. So this is me. I was 10 years old, and this gentleman next to me is the veteran Ray Ferry, who passed away in 2017. But Ray was a glider man, so that means that he landed on in Normandy on June the 6th, 1944, with a glider. So his mission was to bring supply and more soldiers, more troops. So he was not a glider pilot, but he was an infantry soldier coming with gliders. They were part of the airborne unit. So as you can see, the 82nd Airborne patch. So that was 1 year after I've been to the D-Day commemoration for the first time. And the first time I've been, so I was 9 years old, and I was not able to talk with the veterans. So this is on the main street of Sainte-Mère-Église. So this picture was took on the main street of Sainte-Mère-Église. This is where I actually live right now, actually. So this picture was took about like 50 meters. Sorry, I'm talking meters, but 50 meters from where I am right now. And so the little story behind this picture is so 1 year after, so I was back to the commemoration and I wanted to talk with the veterans. So a couple of weeks before, I was like, well, I need to find a solution for that. So I was in class, and after classroom, so I went to see my English teacher, and I say like, sir, I'm going with my parents to the D-Day commemoration, and I know that several World War II veterans will be there, and I want to talk with them. I actually just want to ask them, can I take a picture with you? So he helped me just writing a question on my little paper, and I had just a little paper like this size, you see, and I just came in the front of the veteran, and I look at him and look at my paper and say, can I take a picture with you? And to tell the truth, he actually didn't understand. So he look at me and he say, "What do you want?" And I just try to explain, and he say, "A photo. You want a photo with me?" And we took this beautiful photo. So that was the first experience I had with a veteran, and that was I will never forget that, because this changed my entire life. And a couple years after, in 2016, so I met Christian for the first time. Working as a tour guide and working in several World War II museums, I've seen a lot. I watch a lot of documentaries about World War II, but when I met Christian for the first time, and when I listened to the experience that Christian had 1 year before in 2015, I knew that it was something very different. Most of the people who wants to talk about the war, who wants to talk about history, they always want to talk about strategy, and they want to talk about always military things, which is very, very important, because this is what we try to remember what happened. But we have thousands of documentaries like that. When we hear the story of the Gulf War Freedom and what Christian saw in 2015, we knew that it will be something very different. So the filming of the documentary started in 2018, and this is one of the most beautiful experience. I started to do reenactments when I was younger. I don't really do anymore, but because I'm too old. Most of the soldiers who fought during World War II were younger than I now, but I'm 30 in a couple weeks. But and so yeah, so that's the objective of the reenactment. So we're not soldiers, we're not actors, we're just like trying to represent what happened, and for documentaries, for example. So this is one of the most important thing of the documentary when Danny saw for the first time the American soldiers, and this was filmed exactly where the story happened. So this is what is so interesting with the Gold War Freedom is you decided, Christian, to film with French people, and you decided to film on the exact spot where the stories happened. and this changed everything. You have been through a couple problems. Language was the first one, and but you did it. You did it, and because your objective was to tell something different. You wanted to have the French perspective, the French stories, and you did it great. And if you look in the background of this picture, all the people in the background during reenactments are all French. The beautiful lady, we don't see her, with the white dress is actually my wife. And so we were doing this part with this little girl who represents Danny, and that was one of the most important thing that I had to do in the documentary, because this is what I mean, the moment that the life of Danny changed. Like she always says, we went to bed, we were jamming, and we woke up in the morning, we were free. And that's exactly what this picture represents. Yeah. So that was such an interesting experience, because that was a very different documentary. I used to work for, I used to do reenactments for French documentaries, and it was always about battles and things like that. But the Girl with Freedom talks about human stories and hurt, especially. So this is again, so one of the in Sainte-Marie-du-Mont. So if you remember Jean-Marie talking about the bar du 6 juin, the bar of June the 6th. So this is very close to it. And all those French people who spend their time and they just like want to remember. So you cannot find anybody like in Normandy who doesn't have a story to tell about D-Day, even the youngest person, because it's part of our duty now. We grew up in Normandy, we were born here, and so we want always to keep that story alive. I have some friends, for example, just a little example, they don't live in Normandy anymore, and they actually come back for the commemoration every year because they just want to be here, just want to be a part of it. Like the Water to Veterans. So when the veterans come back to Normandy, I think it's very important. So I met several Water to Veterans during my life. This is one of them, Dennis Thompson, who was a pilot, uh, and and uh, and it's very important for them to come back to Normandy to see that the French people and people in Europe didn't forget what they did. And there is a very interesting story in The Girl of Freedom about that, when you see a pilot who didn't want to come back to France because it can be difficult for them because they had to kill people. They were not in the military for most of them, and they had to go to the military. So for the pilots, when they come back in Normandy, there were some cities that have been destroyed, more than 95% of destruction, and the pilots were part of it. And so when this veteran in the Girl of Freedom, I mean, he is filming in the documentary, and when he came back to Normandy, he didn't want really to enjoy this moment until he met a French lady who actually shared the story. She was living in Saint-Lô, so Saint-Lô, Saintlo. If you do some research about that, so this city was destroyed between 90 to 95%, and she was here and she was alive and she just met him. It was an incredible moment. She met him and she just say, like, you had to destroy the city, but I'm alive and I'm free thanks to you. So that's always, when we commemorate, there was a lot of ceremonies, there was a lot of memorials, and we need that to keep, like, things in the future. But since 80 years now, we are able to share stories with veterans. This is Jen is Charles Normandy, who is still alive. He lives in Normandy. Is from the Maine, and Charles Shea was a combat medic. So another story. This is in the Yorkton Forest when he went back for the first time in 2018. He never been back to the Yorkton Forest. So this is during the Battle of the Bulge. But Charles Normandy is a D-Day veteran. He was a combat medic on Omaha Beach on D-Day. So if some of you saw the film Saving Private Ryan, Charles Normandy was was on that place on D-Day morning. It was a combat medic. He's a Native American, and he shared a story with me in 2018 when he went to the basic training. He actually so did the medical school, and he had this training, and he met this guy named Edouard Morozevich, uh, and they became friends together. And Charles say he was my first white friend. And I know that it's kind of weird to say that, but this is what he say, you know. And I always share that because he says like, I grew up in the reservation, and when I met this guy who became friend, and I was so proud of my friend. Sadly, Edouard Milosevic was killed in action on June 6, 1944, in Omaha Beach, and is now buried in Normandy at the Normandy American Cemetery. So many stories, and Charles is in the film, The Girl Who Wore Freedom. So a lot of projects, and also a couple of years ago, because of that passion for history, I actually made a job with this. But I always want to keep a part of my passion. So it's a job. I'm a tour guide, but I always want to do things because I'm passionate, and not only for money as a tour guide, but I still use some of my time to do some research and discover new things. So this is a picture of Purple Heart Lane. So this is a road on the city of Carentan. So if some of you watch the film Band of Brothers, there is an entire episode named Carentan. This is actually where Christian met Danny and Flo and Jean-Marie in 2015 at exactly on this bridge. and now we are doing a lot of research trying to find how many soldiers were killed in action between June the 9th and June the 11th, 1944. So part of our mission is to go to the archives, find the morning reports, as you can see on the screen here. So we try to identify how many soldiers were killed in action, how many were wounded, and to have the exact number of soldiers, because we have memorials, we have documents, but most of the time we say, oh, it's named Purple Heart Lane. A lot of soldiers were killed in action on this road, but we don't know exactly how many. And 80 years after, we actually don't know it. With two other historians, we are working on it to have a memorial with all the names of those soldiers, and it will be other project with Christian actually in the future. So if you come to Normandy one day, so you will be able to visit the Purple Heart Lane and all the area of Utah, Sainte-Mère-Église, Omaha, and what happened in Normandy on June 6, 1944, and also during the Battle of Normandy. So please don't hesitate to let us know if you're interested to do a tour. We also can do something very personalized. If you want to see something very specific, or if you have family members who fought during World War II, so it's also possible to do the research, going to the archives, and know more about their story. So our mission today is, each time people use the road that we've seen, Purple Heart Lane, I want them to know, even in the future, even in 50 years, how many men and who are those men who were killed in action for my country. So thank you very much for listening this, because we try to do that always with passion and a lot of respect, like David does, has a military, has a veteran. So he was actually able to come back to do also his mission here as a veteran. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. So again, as Olivia mentioned, and Thomas just did, my name is David Chapman. I'm a retired soldier, spent 30 years in the Army, and my final assignment in the Army was as the senior defense representative to France. And as such, I had the responsibility, among others, to basically coordinate all of the commemorative activities in France. That's not only World War II, but World War I, and there are hundreds of them. And I can, without a doubt, say of all the impactful things I did in my military career, being a part of the World War II commemorations, especially around Normandy, and being a part of Christian's film was the highlight of my career. So how did it start? Matt, if you can show the first slides, and I'll talk you through a couple of pictures because they always tell better stories than humans do. In 2015, I got a call from a woman, Christian Taylor. And again, I was the defense attaché. I got a lot of calls about a lot of different things. Often I would not really act on them too much. But Christian called and said, "Hey, I'm a friend of an old Ranger buddies of yours. His name is Mark Janessi, and I've got this project." So in this picture, you see the gentleman with the Michigan shirt is Mark Janessi. He was in the Army and a Ranger School classmate of mine. And Christian often talks about divine intervention. Their kids, Christian's son and Mark's daughter, went to a school dance together. And it was over, I guess, a coffee pre-dance that Christian said, "I've got this project. It's in France. Do you know anybody in France?" And Mark said, "Well, one of my best friends is the senior defense official." So that led to the phone call, which I normally would not have acted on. But she explained the story and said, "This is what we're doing, and I've got this short trailer. Maybe you can watch it and see what you think." And this is what absolutely sold me on Christian Taylor and her project.
My name is Danielle Patrix. I was born on November 26, 1939, in the small village of Sainte-Marie-du-Mont, Normandy, France, 1 year before my life and the lives of all those I knew and loved would change forever. Less than 4 months later, on September 3rd, in response to Hitler's invasion of Poland, France declared war on Germany and began its doomed offensive against Germany's western border 2 weeks later. Less than a year after that, German soldiers moved into my town and into the homes of my neighbors. A little over 9 months later, France surrendered to Germany, and my father left to join Charles de Gaulle in England as one of the Free French. My mother was left to tend to my brother and me alone, in a town now fully occupied and controlled by the Germans. Our food and household goods were steeply rationed, our movements were watched, reported on, and clothes and shoes were in very short supply. Want and fear were around every corner. Five years after the Germans took control of my town, on June 6, 1945, I found myself standing in a ceremony on Utah Beach, wearing a new dress, sewn by my mother Cécile. This dress resembled the American flag I had grown to know and to love. It was made from the parachutes that gently floated soldiers into the nearby fields of my village in the middle of the night 1 year earlier. Parachutes of the soldiers who fought valiantly to liberate me, my family, my neighbors, and all of France from Hitler's terrible grasp. This is my story. Normandy's story.
So you can see now why I was easily moved. Not only was Christian's personal passion for this project on display, her creative work was right there in front, and it showed me right away that I had to be a part of this. So I'd like to go through a couple of more slides just to show you a little bit about how our relationship continued. Following that phone call and this trailer, Christian made a trip to the U.S. Embassy where I was serving. That's actually the U.S. ambassador's residence, of all things, in Paris. We came out and began what's now been a really incredible partnership around this film in our personal lives. So as part of both my roles and as part of this film, I parachuted into what is called La Fière drop zone. It's right there in Normandy, France. It's the same supposed drop zone that many of our parachutists did on D-Day. Of course, they were spread all over the region. If you've never jumped out of an airplane, that is me in contemporary combat gear. That is the inside of a C-17 aircraft. And that is the last jump I ever made in the US military. And it was on D-Day about 6-7 years ago. Right after the drop, I landed, took my parachute off, and I walked over, and I had a microphone on, which was interesting. And Christian came up to me, and I ran into Bob Deviney. And you probably saw this scene. Hopefully you remember it in the film, where Bob and I were talking about what it was like to jump on that parachute operation. We had German soldiers, contemporary German soldiers. We had Romanians. I think we had Dutch. We had some French, all sharing the same operation. And it just proved to me that the world could come from a very dark place from June 6th, 1944 to where we were that day and all share a moment of joy. And I told Bob personally, I said, we did this for you, and gave him a big hug. So you probably saw that in the film. This is us as well, Flo Plana, Christian, Bob, and myself. I was a younger man back then. Okay, Matt. So in addition to the Normandy commemorations, there are commemorations all over France. If you know your history, you realize that about 6 weeks after D-Day in Normandy, there was another D-Day in Saint-Tropez down in the southern portion of France. This is a commemoration where that's my daughter. She was carrying a wreath with me to lay for the orphans of war lost. And there's a U.S. cemetery down there similar to Normandy American in Normandy. This is D-Day 75, and I found this an interesting picture. This is Bonnie Morgan. She's an actress in Hollywood, but that's not why she's important. Her great uncle is a World War II veteran, and this was for D-Day 75 with our naval attaché there on my right, Duck Winkler. And she was there just to represent her great uncle. And it was just full of people like this that were so proud of their family members to come there and be a part of the 75th commemoration. And that is her great uncle, Irving Locker. Okay. And this is a shot that I took on D-Day 75. This is a World War II veteran in a kind of a VIP holding area overlooking Omaha Beach. So someone mentioned Saving Private Ryan in that entry scene of that film. That is the beach that they stormed. And if you've never been there, the tide is probably about halfway out. It goes way out. So you can see how much terrain those soldiers had to cover as they ran up. And this gentleman was quite pensive in his own thoughts about what may have taken place either that day or even through the rest of the war. But I thought it was just a great shot to show what we were able to do to provide an opportunity of closure for some of these service members. So, and Olivia, that's my piece.
Great. Thank you, David and Thomas and Christian. Now, Christian, I would love for you to introduce our next clip, which was for me one of the most beautiful scenes in your film. So go ahead and cue it up for our audience.
Yeah, this actually is most people's favorite scene. A lot of people have talked to me about this. This scene is with a veteran who really did not want to go back to Normandy. He was part of the bombing of St. Lo, and it's the story that Thomas told earlier. He was so afraid. He went back. He was afraid to meet the people, and he just was late to all the events. And finally, the woman in charge asked him why he was late, and he said, "I just can't go. I can't go because I'm afraid." And like Thomas said, the woman in the clip changed everything for him. So this clip, if you haven't seen the film, is incredibly moving. It's just, you picked a great clip, Olivia. So let's roll the clip.
I watched something magical happen when World War II veterans returned to the forests, beaches, fields, and villages where they fought. As they shared their stories, some for the very first time, they were listened to, embraced, and adored.
Last year we had a World War II veteran who came for the first time last year. He was very scared about what we could think about what he did in 1944. And each time we expected to be in time at this place or this place, he wasn't late. And I said one time, Bob, it's not allowed. You are in the group now. You must you must be with everybody at the same time because it's not correct to arrive in late somewhere. You must be with us. And he said, yes, but I'm scared. I said, about what? We're not going to eat you? And he said, no, but you remember Saint-Lô? Saint-Lô was destroyed in 1944. We killed civilian people, and I saw that, and I can't go. And I said, yes, but, and we were in a ceremony in Carentan, and the World War II veterans were here, and we had a nice person, maybe she was around 80 years old, 80, 85, maybe 85 years old, and she came next to us, and she said, she was French, she came and said, you are taking care of this group, the World War II veterans? And I said, yes, and I would like to tell them something, but I don't speak American. So I'm going to translate if it's not too difficult. And I said, yes, I was in 1944 in Saint-Lô. And I want to thank all those veterans for what they have done for my freedom. Oh, I said, wow. I said, someone is waiting for you since 73 years. I said, Bob, can you stand up? I've got a lady for you. And when this lady told him thank you, I was in Saint-Lô, and Bob told about Saint-Lô. He was really scared about what he did in Saint-Lô. And when the connection between this lady and this World War II veteran began, this World War II veteran was liberated. It was another man. Because this lady said, thank you, sir. I was in Saint-Lô. Of course it was destroyed. Of course you killed civilian people. I was there. I saw like you. But I thank you. And after, Bob danced all night. It was another man. He wanted to open the window in the cars and say, hello, hello. He wanted to stop. He wanted to sign autographs. This lady liberated this World War II veteran from all those years. He was just waiting for that. Just some words. It was another man.
Great. What a terrific clip. What a terrific film. What an important story to remember. So we will get to your questions in just a few minutes. So this is an opportunity for all of our audience members to continue typing those questions into the chat box. I will be serving as your moderator, and I look forward to asking your questions of our panel. Right now, I'm going to tell you what we have upcoming here at the Sousa Mendes Foundation. So we have one more program in February, and we actually have 3 programs coming up in March. So coming up on February 23, which is in 2 weeks' time, we're going to go to Israel of 1961, which is the important trial of Adolf Eichmann after he was apprehended by the Mossad in Argentina, where he had been living. So that is the trial that was watched around the world, and we're going to have the daughter of Gideon Hausner, in other words, the prosecutor, Gideon Hausner, his daughter, Tamar Hausner, will be with us in person. She was there as a 14-year-old in the trial, and she became an attorney herself because of her father's example, and you will not want to miss that program. That is in 2 weeks. Then in March, we have 2 online programs, as we always do, our online programs. But then unusually, we will also have a program in person. And so we're going to have a program at the 92nd Street Y in New York City. So for anybody who is in the New York tri-state area, I hope that we'll meet you in person. It's going to be a book talk of Richard Horowitz, who's written the important book In the Garden of the Righteous. So he's being featured by the 92nd Street Y. We are co-presenting that program. I will give you details later this week or perhaps next week because they're giving us a discount code that's not yet active. So once that is active, I will send it around. They've reserved a block of tickets for us, so I hope to meet many of you there. So right now, let's see a little trailer for the film, The Eichmann Trial.
This building was originally designed as a theater. It has been rushed to completion in order to serve as the temporary courthouse in which the State of Israel will bring Adolf Eichmann to trial.
The 15-year hunt is over. Adolf Eichmann, most elusive of the major Nazi war criminals, will be tried in what some people call the trial of the century.
I am against the trial.
Why?
I don't feel one man can pay for the crime of killing 6 million Jews.
Do you think it's a good idea to remind people of all these things again?
The responsible persons are dead now. This doesn't do any good.
More than 700 reporters and cameramen have come to Jerusalem.
This is always a page one story.
There will be 750 spectators in the auditorium, and the accused man will step into a cabin of bulletproof glass.
אדולף אייכמן, אתה מודה שאתה שותף לרצח של מיליונים יהודים.
Da blieb mir ja nichts anderes übrig, da musste ich gehorchen, was befohlen war.
No one is now in doubt that Eichmann is going to have a fighting defense.
Nein, das stimmt nicht, denn
Sehen Sie hier, dass tatsächlich Gideon Hausner Eichmann packen kann?
Sondern es ist ein ungewöhnlicher Angeklagter und man müsste eigentlich ungewöhnliche Methoden anwenden, um ihn irgendwie zu packen.
Que tous ses comportements, que toute son attitude était normale. On peut devenir Eichmann sans cesser pour autant d'être normal.
Okay, so you will be getting an email after today's program about how to sign up for that and other programs. So let's get now to your questions. So the first question has to do with the fact that this film focuses on the U.S. story at D-Day, but certainly there was also the story of the British and the Canadians. So what about those stories that are not told in the film?
So if you look back at the film, the very first slide deals with that question. We spent 25 seconds of the very first slide of the film addressing that. When I landed in Normandy for the very first time, I spent all of my time in the American sector. So I only met people in the American sector. I only met veterans in the American sector. So that is what my film focused on. And so we told that up front and shared that that was the only perspective that, that could cover in a 90-minute film. But we readily recognized all of the other people that liberated Europe and thank them for that.
So people are wondering about Thomas. Thomas, how is it that you have this passion that developed at such a young age? Where does it come from?
So everything started. So I was 8 years old, and my parents organized a little trip. So I grew up in Cherbourg. So if you ever seen a map of Normandy, Cherbourg is a harbor, so the very north city of Normandy. The objective of D-Day actually for the American army, for the first army actually. And so I grew up about like 45 minutes from the landing beaches, and my parents just organized this little tour visiting museums, and we've been to the Normandy American Cemetery. And as an 8-year-old kid, the first thing I thought when I was at the cemetery is, well, this cemetery looks very different than where my great-grandfather is buried. And that's what I was thinking as an 8-year-old kid. So I asked my parents, what is this place? And I understood after what happened. So I asked more to visit more museums, and 2 years later I met for the first time Ray Ferry, so the veteran. So I have been educated to the story of D-Day and of the Second World War because I grew up next to the D-Day area. So yeah, and this is why I was saying, so I'm very lucky to know about that and to have been educated to that. Yeah.
So people are interested in learning more about the Native American veteran Charles Norman Shea. So how is it that he lives in Normandy today?
So Christian knows very well Charles as well. So Charles was he actually spent a lot of his life in Austria. So if I'm saying correctly, so Austria, Europe, not Australia. And when he got retired, he went back to the US. His wife passed away, and he started to come to Normandy, and he met this lady. If you watch the film The Girl Wore Freedom, you can see the story of Marie Pascale. She explained totally the story of Charles Norman Shea. and he was supposed to stay for 2 weeks, and he actually stayed for years because he still lives at Marie Pascal's house. So this is where he was just staying during the commemorations, and he just has to stay a couple more days and actually years.
Yeah, and just to add on to that a little bit, Marie Pascal was saying that she did go and visit him, and he wasn't being taken care of by his family or the VA, and he was really declining. And we could see that as well. And then when I met him the second time, he looked like a new person. She added years to his life by the care that he received in France. It was remarkable. And I know that he has lived longer because of the care that Marie has given him. So she got him involved in raising bees and turtles and all these other things that he's done. So she got him a cat, and it's been incredible.
Wow. So there is the person in the film who had the terrible tragedy of being mistaken for a German, the Frenchman who was shot in the back 6 times and then somehow forgave all. I mean, it was almost incomprehensible. Can you flesh out that story a little bit more? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one who's wondering about that.
Yeah, to me, this is Michel de Valois, and Michel, to me, was the quintessential story. And he was the one that I really wanted to tell in this story. This story was, Charles de Valois is the mayor of Sainte Marie du Mont. He's also a very good friend of Danny. Danny's aunt and uncle worked on the Brécourt Manor property on D-Day. This was featured in the Band of Brothers. Tom Hanks wanted to tell this story, but was not given permission by the family because they did not want the story told by Hollywood and changed. But when I went to talk to Charles de Valois, I really needed to get his permission to even have any access. The very first time when I went in 2017, I went as a scout trip to see if the people in France would be open to me asking them questions and going into their homes and what access could I have. But I was told that Charles de Valois was the doorstop and I had to get through. And this was his father, and the story, he was very tight and did not want anyone to tell it. But I promised him that I would let him tell the story. And I found this footage by, it was very, very deep in the archives. I was able to find it. And this man his father was incredible. And I just couldn't believe that he understood, he understood what was happening, that these soldiers were confused and these soldiers were tense, and that he was so grateful to be liberated that he forgave them. He spent 8 months recuperating from these injuries, and he came back never the same. And not only did he just forgive them, but he made a museum in their honor and spent the rest of his life honoring them. And what's not in the film is that he also made these coins, these beautiful gold coins. I actually have one. I can show it to you if you want me to. It'll just take me a moment to grab it. But because he made these coins and he gave them to everyone that came on his property. And they're these beautiful bronze coins. And nobody has them other than veterans. And he kept telling me these stories about these coins. And Dick Winters was given one. Dick Winters was in the movie Band of Brothers, and he would come back to the farm. And one time he came back, and Charles had made new medals, other ones than his father had made, and they were bigger and grander. And Charles tried to give him this new grand medal. And Dick Winters pulled the old one out of his pocket and said, "Son, I have one that your father gave me, and I carry it with me all the time. I will keep this one. Thank you." And so he just tells me that story so proudly. And I kept asking him to see one of the original coins, and he actually gave me one. So again, it was one of the most proud possessions that I have is this coin. So I may go and get it in just a minute. I've never shown it really anywhere.
Yeah, you go and get
Okay.
it. I'm going to give the floor now to David. We're going to turn to our final thoughts. And David, I'm particularly interested in knowing how that experience of working as you did on these commemorations has changed you personally, but also anything you'd like to say to our audience in closing.
Thanks, Olivia. To the first point, it gave me incredible closure to a long military career. Often you do things and you don't really know the why. I found the why much later, the back end of a military career, that it came full circle, that I was able to serve and help World War II veterans come to closure for a lot of them through this. And then with Christian's participation in creating this film, it continues to this day and will continue with the next generation of our youth. I think the last point I shared with Matt yesterday, I also work for Michelin. They recruited me out of the army in Paris. And a lot of people don't know the Michelin role. Michelin is a French company. And when France fell to the Nazis, so did the Michelin factories and plants and everything. So it was under the Nazi regime. We all know the Michelin Guide for Michelin-starred restaurants. The last Michelin Guide that was produced was 1939, and hopefully you can see it. I've got a replica of it right here. It's the 1939 Michelin Guide. And the rights to this were given to the U.S. Army, to the War Department. And so this particular one is the only non-red Michelin Guide in the world. And at the bottom, it says Military Intelligence Division. They printed about 300,000 of these. They were given to the leaders and the planners of the war effort. And so this is what the service members carried in their cargo pockets and their rucksacks as they liberated Normandy and the rest of Europe. And the reason it was so valuable is because this was the last known cartography, maps, guides of any of the small towns all throughout Europe, because that's what Michelin was known for: guides, maps, and rating restaurants. So they carried these all the way through the liberation of Europe. If you can get your hands on one of these on eBay, do so. But this is a replica you can get for about $30. So that's the story of Michelin and my connection to all of this.
Wonderful. Thomas, what would you like to say to our audience in closing today? And you should unmute yourself, please. You're muted, Thomas.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. So I would like to say that always, like David was saying, the connection with the World War II veterans. I grew up in France. I'm 30 years old, and I grew up free, totally free, going to college for like being in a country, and I'm very, very happy and lucky for that. At my age, when I was in college, most of those soldiers were in the army fighting in the country, in my country. So having the connection with the veterans, we were lucky to do it, because most of them now passed away day after days. So I just want to try to preserve their stories and share their stories, because what they had to do and for other people is something that we have to never forget, because we always say that freedom is not free, and it's true, but what those men had to do for other people, and when I say other people, is the people that were living during the war, but also us right now, because it's been like 80 years with no war in France, and nobody knew that before in France. So this is why the connection with the veterans and the people who lived the war is important, because it gives us an important vision of what is freedom, actually. Yeah. So thank you very much for letting me talking and sharing my experience.
Christian, why don't you show us that coin?
Yes. All right. So this is one of my prized possessions. This is one of the original coins made by Charles de Valavier. And it has, the parachutes and the water landings carved into it on this side. And on this side, it has sort of the Europe on there. This one's harder to see, but it has Europe. And I couldn't believe he gave it to me. This has been such a profound experience for me, because most people in America grow up thinking the French people hate them. And so when I went to France, and I realized that was so ridiculous, and that's what people, they feel when they see my film here in America, that it just disposes them of that idea, dispossesses them. The French people that I met are just so incredibly wonderful and received me with such open arms. And they were shocked, actually, as an American, that I wanted to tell their story. And so, you know, Charles was just, I guess, so grateful to me, which is just so humbling that they cared. And I think that's true of anyone who feels so underrepresented and so unseen. And I'm just honored that I was able to bring light to people that feel unseen and unheard. And I think we should all continue to do that. And the Sousa Mendez Foundation, that's your mission. You shine a light on people that have never been seen and never been heard before. And so I thank you for including us in your mission, and that it really is a blessing to me. So thank you.
Yes. And yeah, thanks for letting us show your film. Very, very kind of you. Thank you to our wonderful panel, to our devoted audience. I hope that whatever team of yours is fighting in the Super Bowl wins today. And I wish everybody a wonderful day. So take care, everybody. Be well. Be kind to each other. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.